الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله تعالى فإن الله تعالى مع المتقين وبعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, reminded the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, and therefore reminded and informed those that were around the Prophet alayhi salatu salam and those that came after the Prophet alayhi salatu salam and those that will come after the Prophet alayhi salatu salam, that the Prophet alayhi salatu salam was upon great character. And not only great character, but character which indicated that this person was not a normal person. The Prophet ﷺ, one of his distinguishing features, one of the qualities that the Prophet ﷺ possessed, that made it clear for those who looked upon him and pondered over him that he was a prophet, his character. And in fact, as has been mentioned many times, when we look to the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, when we read about his life and we read about those who entered into Islam, the early Muslims, the early believers, they were those who were close to him, those who lived with him, those who had been interacting with him on a personal and intimate level for many years. The first, of course, his wife, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, and Ali ibn Abi Talib, although a young man, he was always around the Prophet ﷺ, and the likes of Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala an. These individuals, they knew the Prophet ﷺ prior to revelation, and they knew his character. And so, although of course being the Quraysh and being masters of the Arabic language, when they heard even but a small portion of the Quran, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان, and the rest of the verses, they would know that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the structure, from the wording, and so on and so forth. They would understand immediately that this is not from the word of man, but it was the character of the Prophet ﷺ which was truly for them that which made it all plausible, possible, and certain. And Khadija radiallahu anha, when the Prophet ﷺ first received revelation from Jibreel, and he came down from the mountain and he informed Khadija. Khadija saw something was wrong with the Prophet ﷺ. And she asked him what happened. The Prophet ﷺ informed her. And imagine, what did the Prophet ﷺ inform her of? That he had an encounter with a man in a cave, and Khadija knew this cave. Khadija herself ascended this mountain, and she knew that this is not something which is normal. She didn't question the Prophet ﷺ. She didn't question his sanity. She didn't question the truthfulness of what she was saying. What did she do? She comforted him, and she reminded him of that which made him distinguished from others, and in doing so told us why she believed that he was a prophet. His character, keeping ties with people. And when you look to something which again has been mentioned previously, when you look to the Islamic conquests that took place after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fact that these conquests and the expansion of Islam took place after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, showing us that the presence of the Prophet is not a condition for success for our ummah. So when the Sahaba, when the companions entered into these lands, what did they do? Yes, they fought with the powers that were present at the times, but they did not fight with the people. They did not fight with the individuals. They did not fight with the people on the grounds. Those people entered into Islam themselves with their own will, using their own minds and their own hearts. What was it that led for the masses to enter into Islam? What they saw from the companions, and of course what they heard from the message of Islam, and what they then thereafter saw from the tabi'een, who lived with the companions and took from the companions. Character, the character of Islam. And what is the character of Islam? If you just think over that which we know of, the basics that we know of Islam. For example, something which we would overlook but can have a great impact, and something which today has become overlooked by many and not taken into consideration by most perhaps. Removing that which could be harmful from the street. When you see something on the street, simply picking it up and putting it in the rubbish bin. That is a sign of Iman. It's a character quality that you're looking out for others. You're taking into consideration other people. Imagine, for example, there is an item on the road, and if that item is not removed, a car hits it and crashes. And you remove that item, you've potentially saved a life. But not only that, you're taking into consideration those around you. You're taking into consideration the pollution which is taking place, and so on and so forth. From the smallest, something like that, the smallest, to one of the most difficult qualities of character. وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Those who are able to control their anger, suppress their anger, overlook the mistakes of others. This is something which is beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. These things are from ihsan. So from the smallest, removing something which is harmful on the street, and it might be anything, to the greatest, controlling our anger, overlooking the mistakes of others. And the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say when he spoke about his reason for coming? He said, لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, to complete good character. And previously on this minbar, we spoke about character being Islam, character with the Creator and character with the creation. That's what Islam is, character with the Creator and character with the creation. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me everything that I have, everything which I value, and that which I don't value, which I'm unaware of, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me my tests, personalized my tests according to my nature, because Allah knows what I can handle and what I can't handle, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me everything, then would it not be from bad character if I didn't pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If I didn't give charity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If I didn't obey that which Allah had asked of me? Would that not be bad character? It's a lack of gratitude. And likewise with the creation. And there's a point to reflect upon here when it comes to character and the creation. Character is something which we learn through example. Yes, we can read about character, but the best form of teaching character is through example. And this is one of the most important roles of the parents. If I raise my child and I'm shouting at my child all the time, I'm angry with my child all the time, I'm physical with my child, or I'm abusive towards my child's mother or my child's father, or I'm abusive in front of my child to my parents, or my child sees me swearing, sees me lying, sees me doing whatever else it is that's from bad character that we're talking about today, what's my child going to grow up to do? To copy, to emulate. It's natural. When you look at a young child will copy their parents or their siblings. And so if we have good character, we are teaching our children to have good character. And it relates to something which our community is suffering from today. The lack of father figures, absent fathers. Fathers that are in the homes, but they're not actually connected to their children. They have no input with their children. They don't relate to their children. They don't communicate with their children. Or fathers that are not in their homes. And it's a choice. There are the circumstances, yes, wherein it's out of their hands, and we're not talking about that issue. But when a man chooses not to be involved in his children's life, he's making a grave, grave error that's going to continue for generations. It's going to continue to have an effect for generations. And it's not something which we have a choice about. If I have taken or made the choice to have a child, then the responsibility becomes something which is compulsory for me to fulfill. I cannot just walk away from that responsibility because I don't like the mother, for example, or I don't like the environment, or no. That child now is my responsibility. My responsibility to educate that child, to provide for that child, to teach that child that which that child needs to survive in this dunya and to be successful in the akhirah. It's a responsibility. The Prophet ﷺ, when a young man came to him and he wanted to join the Prophet ﷺ in one of the battles, and at that time it was compulsory for the men, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said to this young man, do you have parents? He said yes. He said, that's your jihad, that's your struggle. If that's with the parents, what about the parents with the children? What about the parents with the children? Abandoning our children, it's a mistake which is going to leave an impact in our community, in our society, for generations to come. Because that child is not going to learn. If the father is not in the home, how will the son learn how to interact with a woman, how to treat a woman, how a woman should treat him? If he doesn't have a role model to show him how to treat a woman, if he doesn't have a role model to show how his mother is treating his father. Likewise for the women. There are women that leave their households as well. But a problem that we're suffering from, which relates to character, relates deeply to character. Because often bad character comes from a place of frustration, a place of anger, a place of trauma which has not been looked at, dealt with. And that can happen when the father leaves the home. And we only have to look outside into society to see what's happened, to see the impact that this has on society when we have fatherless homes, generations of fatherless homes. Something that we have to reflect upon as a community, as individuals. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده وصلوات ربي وسلامه على أشرف الأنبياء ومن تبعه وبعد. And on the note of fathers and character, one of someone that I lived with for many years, and this individual had the best character I have ever seen from a person. And this person, this individual, he was from the Uyghur Muslims in China. My roommate, whilst I was studying in Medina, was from the Uyghur Muslims in China. And when all of these issues that we now see taking place first started, I was with him in Medina. And he was telling me that the government now in China, they are requesting all of the Uyghur Muslims to return back to China. Once they get there, they're putting them into prisons and so on and so forth. And so you can imagine how stressed out this young man was, how perhaps he was scared, although I will not accuse him of being scared because I didn't see fear from him. I saw stress, of course, and that's natural. But the person, and this young man is still in Medina and he's still studying. Why? The police in China came to his father and said to him that if your son does not come back, we're going to arrest you and you're going to prison on his behalf. So what do you think his father did? His father told him, son, you stay, you carry on studying, I'll go to prison on your behalf. And that's an example of a father. And that father, he made a sacrifice, but not only did he make a sacrifice, he taught his son something. He taught his son how to sacrifice. He taught his son how to love. He taught his son what's important in this life. He didn't teach his son to run away from a problem. He didn't teach his son to sacrifice others for his own safety. No, he taught him a lesson. And that's what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims today. Until today it's happening. And I've spoken about this before on the minbar. I've spoken about what's happening. And I asked, how is it that we can purchase items that are being produced, and we know these items are being produced by our Muslim brothers and sisters in concentration camps in China? And there are many companies that are doing it. Just check. There are fashion brands that are doing it. Tech companies that are doing it. And yes, it's hard to boycott these companies, and perhaps these companies will not be harmed necessarily by our boycott. We can harm these companies with our boycotts if we did it collectively, but perhaps as individuals we won't have that impact. But sometimes it's not about the impact, it's about the principle of the matter. And this is what we as men have to teach our sons and our daughters, and what our women, the mothers, need to teach their sons and their daughters, to be people of principles, people of sacrifice. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be people of principle and sacrifice, regardless of that which stands in front of us. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma arda an Abi Bakr wa an Uthman wa an Ali wa an sa'ir sahabati ajma'in. Allahumma ya mujib ad-da'awat. Allahumma arda an Abi Bakr wa Umar wa Uthman wa Ali wa an sa'ir sahabati ajma'in. Allahumma ya mujib ad-da'awat. Allahumma taqabbal minna wa'afu anna. Allahumma ya mujib ad-da'awat ya nasir al-nasirin. Allahumma ansur ikhwanana fi anha' al-alam ya rabb al-alamin. Allahumma alayka بالطاغية الظالمين. اللهم يا أرحم الراحمين يا أكرم الأكرمين كن مع إخواننا في الصين. اللهم كن مع إخواننا في الصين. اللهم فك عنهم. اللهم يا رب العالمين فك عنهم واعف عنهم وتقبل منهم شهداءهم. اللهم يا رب العالمين يا مجيب الدعوات يا أرحم الراحمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين القائمين بالدين وأقم الصلاة.